Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Return Missionary Next Chapters podcast. I am your host, Sid Bassett. Today, we're sitting down with Ashleigh Wood Bassett. Ashleigh is a mother of 5 wonderful daughters, an avid sports and outdoor enthusiast, and a rad skier and pretty mean basketball player. From the mission fields of Baltimore to the front office of the Utah Jazz, Ashleigh's life has always been in high gear. Whether managing a very busy home, snow skiing, mountain biking, managing real estate properties, and making time for her family and faith, Ashleigh is someone who knows how to move and get things done. But behind the scenes of her service and her career, she has navigated a deeply personal battle with anorexia and nervosa that began in her early teens. In this episode, we plan to address her successes and struggles and how God has played a hand in navigating that journey, both while serving as a missionary and in the years that followed. Hello, Ashleigh, and welcome to the show.
Hey, Sid, thank you for having me.
Boy, I just love Ashleigh Wood Bassett. She's quite something. The first time I met her, actually, we were at a family gathering, and it was a Sunday afternoon, I remember, and she was in her Sunday best, balling it with the boys. She was out there. Everyone else was inside doing their thing. She was out there schooling the boys in basketball. That really implanted something in my head that I like this girl.
I ripped a couple skirts on my mission playing basketball in Baltimore, so I'm not unfamiliar with playing in different outfits.
Well, that was quite an introduction to our broader family. So, growing up, obviously you were an athlete, and I know you love adventure. Talk about that with our listeners and how that helped approach your direction in life and maybe your mission in Baltimore as well.
Yeah, so both of my parents were athletes. My mom was a big time runner in Utah, and we moved to Idaho, and there they had one race a year on the 4th of July, assuming it wasn't snowed out. And so my mom had us running and training all the time, and we'd come to Utah and run races. My dad taught recreation leadership at the college and frequently took me out of school to cross country skiing or backpacking or canoeing with his college classes. And it was different then. He'd come to the door of my room and say, "Ash, come here. You want to go canoeing with college kids?" And I'd say, "Yeah." And we'd leave and we'd walk by the secretary and I'd say, "Bye, Mrs. Steiner." And she'd say, "Catch you later, granola girl." And it wasn't a big deal. There were no checkout slips. And I had 2 older brothers, and I just learned that I could do things. I could do things physically because my dad never made me feel less than as a girl. He never made it seem like I couldn't go do these things with his college kids. And seeing the way college kids responded to hard things, I think was more educational for me than learning all of the counties of Idaho, which I did not learn, and everybody else in Idaho did. So I can't sing that song, but I saw how people dealt with hard situations. So I think I got lucky. I was really lucky with my parents.
Wow, thank you. One more thing I can't do is recite the counties of Texas. So if that
Yeah,
was something I was supposed to learn when I was younger, I failed at that as well.
we're all
Well,
hosts.
that's a sensational story. I mean, to think about your teachers letting you just go, granola girl. I love that. I'm curious. I know you do this with your children now. I mean, I know I see
Yes.
them, at least I follow you on social media. And have you ever gone to check out your girls just to go skiing on the slopes because there's snow that morning?
Oh, absolutely. The very first time I did it, I asked Secretary Miss Danny, I said, "Do I write in skiing?" And she said, "Oh, no, 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 no. Just put family reason." And I said, "Got it." And we've kind of been on the same page about that ever since.
The little nod and wink. I love that. I
Totally.
hope she's not listening or the administrators are not out there listening right now.
Nah,
That
she's
is
retiring.
fantastic.
It's all fine. It's all fine.
Wow. So you really did have an upbringing of adventure and being in the outdoors. And obviously that sort of weaves its way through your life. Can we fast
Yeah.
forward a little bit? Sort of going on your mission. As missionaries, it can be a bit of a shock. They're not used to it. They've never done it before. And so they get into the field. Tell us about your mission experience and maybe how your upbringing influenced your missionary service.
Yeah, I grew up in Rexburg, and when I opened my call to Baltimore, my dad said it would be cool to have you go to some crazy foreign place, but it will be nice to know you're safe in the States. And I said, uh-huh, thinking Baltimore has like this third highest homicide. And I said, you bet, Dad. My first night, we were walking across a basketball court, and to my right, I saw people like handing over drugs, just clearly. And then to the other side, there were people engaging in other activities that I had seen on TV and never in person. And I thought, this is as foreign for an Idaho girl as possible. It was shocking, but I loved it. And I think because I had been out of my comfort zone enough growing up, it was okay. And I welcomed it because I knew that I would learn things doing that I wouldn't in a more comfortable space, even if that comfortable space was like the Swiss Alps where I would physically feel comfortable. This was so different. And like I said, we played basketball with all of these little kids in the ghetto almost every day. And that created this, it felt like Provo, Utah. These huge Escalades would drive by us, blacked out, and they'd roll down the window and be like, "What up, sisters?" And we're like, "Hi, T-Bone." And they would take care of us. We felt totally safe because we loved their kids, so they loved us. Yeah, so it was in that way it was uncomfortable that it was so different, but that made it fun. That made it really challenging in a good way.
Well, it sounds like that adventure. I mean, from a little town of Rexburg, Idaho to the world, you were introduced to that really quickly. But it sounds like because of your upbringing, you did adapt to that well. And even though it was uncomfortable and new experience for it, it sounded like everyone at least accepted you, especially
Yeah.
out there on the court. I love that. So let's talk about sort of your relationship in that sense with the church. So was there ever a time in your mission when your testimony, which I'll just go off the assumption you had one, shifted from something that you kind of carried with you to something that maybe carried you or that became a part of you in your DNA?
Yeah, I guess two things. I had a companion from Taiwan who classic ensign story. She had met missionaries, joined the church. Her family was very opposed, but let her join. She snuck out of her house to go on a mission, like in the middle of the night, flew to Utah. And I'd see, I missed skiing on my mission for sure. And I missed physical adventures, but she had lost her family. And so when I'd hear elders complain about missing their truck or hunting season, I thought, she's going home to nobody because of this gospel. And that's when I think it became really real for me that the gospel is real and that it actually, I had grown up, everybody basically were members of the church. And so seeing somebody, and I had never had to give anything up for it. And seeing that she had was incredibly humbling to me, and beautiful. And that I think helped it become so much more real to me. And then I was trained by a perfectionist. And for me, that worked really, really well. It liked the expectation. But when I trained for the first time, I trained as I had been trained. And a few weeks in, realized I was completely failing this sister. It was not what worked for her. And that was really humbling. And so just learning that people matter a lot more than anything, and that we need to know people to be able to love and help them, I think really shaped how I would look at the future and future relationships, and if that makes sense.
It does, and it's beautiful. I love that because in a sense you had to sort of ask yourself, why am I here? And you were given an answer and you're like, oh, wow, it wasn't what I expected. This wasn't the answer I expected. And yet it very much penetrated your soul. And then the adaptability with companions that didn't go, we totally understand that one.
Yeah.
So that is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
I have to tell you super, super fast,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
short story. I got so sick one night, so sick. And I was stuck in the bathroom for like 55 minutes. And my companion, I don't know if you've seen Dumb and Dumber, but it was a Dumb and Dumber experience. And I came out and my companion was just red-faced laughing. And she said, "Sister Wood, I haven't laughed since I've been here." And I'm a laugher. You know me, Sid. I love to laugh. I love to have fun. And I suddenly realized I have been taking this so seriously. I've been taking myself out of it. And that was another humbling, like, yeah, this isn't me. This isn't how I should do this. So again, that adaptability of knowing that God made us who we are for reasons and not giving those things up to be perfect or ideal, I guess.
I
Sorry,
love that.
I had
Well,
cut you off.
no, 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 no. I'm so glad you added that story because the reality of it is I can't see Sirius and Ashley at the same time. I mean, those words don't go together. And
Yeah.
so you have to be the missionary God intended you to be. And that's not the missionary that each of your companions were intended to be. So you followed his lead through the Spirit to becoming the missionary you needed to be. And hey, it made your companions laugh. I like that.
Yes, it did.
But apparently there were not all happy chapters on the mission. I know that there was a chapter or two in your life, not just on your mission, but after your life, that was tough for you, and it was related to body image. Would you feel comfortable sharing with our listeners that journey with anorexia and nervosa and how that played out in your life?
Yeah. Um, it It mildly started actually in high school during health class where we learned about eating disorders, and it piqued my interest. I had never known anything about eating disorders, and I had always been so skinny, and then started puberty. And I remember being at my locker in 8th grade looking down, being like, whose body is this? This isn't my body. And
Mhm.
it was like puberty did a trick on me. And then later in high school, yeah, so we had learned about like Karen Carpenter, and that night, my family and I were going out after having had dinner, and I was brushing my teeth. I had like a weak gag reflex, and I didn't mean to throw up, but I threw up. And I was like, wow, that was really easy. And so I started doing it. And that was literally how it started in high school. And
Mm.
it was more a game of, can I do this without getting caught? And 4 or 5 months in, I had definitely lost weight, but my teeth felt gross, my hands smelled, and that, like, the disgustingness of it for me helped me stop. And then in college, it kind of came back for a little bit, and I quickly told my best friend because I thought if I don't tell anybody, then I will do it for who knows how long. Um, and on my mission, and so I took care of it. On my mission, kind of similar to that 8th grade day, I remember being in the shower and I looked down and I thought, whose body is this? Because back then we had exercise time, but we didn't have exercise time. It wasn't really in the schedule. And I came downstairs and I said, I'm sorry, Sister Byington. I don't care what you want to do, but I have got to get up early and start exercising. And miraculously, she said, Sister Wood, I was just going to tell you, I don't care what you do. I need to study the gospel more. And I said, great. You sit on the porch and I will run laps in our parking lot. I mean, laps, just this rectangle. And I did. And obviously, I didn't lose any pounds that first day, but I felt the spirit more that very first day because we're out there teaching people how to be happy and take care of their spirits and their souls. And I wasn't. I was ignoring half of it. And I that taught me a lot about effort, that it's not the end goal, it's our daily contributions to whatever it is. And as a result, I think I mentioned it to you, we taught our next door neighbor in my workout clothes. He would be leaving for work at the Pentagon and asking me what we were going to do that day and why we were there. And he ended up joining the church and serving in the DC temple. Um, and to me, that felt like a miracle. Um, and when we would do our recitation and review, I had weights. My mom, you'll die. She next day aired me weights on my mission. She spent $200 to send me $40 weights. And so as we're as we're reciting, I'm doing the biceps, I'm doing stairs, and I flew home December 9th, and my dad and I skied December 10th, and he was like, "How are your legs in shape?" And I said, "I've been reciting a lot of scriptures, Dad, with a lot of weights." So the mission, it was hard with weight, but it wasn't a disordered eating time as much. And then I got home, I got healthy. I was healthy, but then it was after our third child, Nellie, that I really got too obsessed and with losing weight and started tracking calories and yeah, like lost my cycle for a couple of years and was not in a great spot. I would tell my husband, I don't think normal people think about food and exercise the way I do. And he said, well, if you need to talk to somebody. And then I thought, no, that sounds hard. So I didn't for a long time.
Wow. I have a lot of clients that I work with that do struggle with body image missionaries as well. And I'm just so impressed with how you took ownership of it and were able to work through that one twice. And having young children can be a stressful thing. We'll talk about that perhaps a little bit more in the show. I do want to go
Yeah,
back to a comment you made, and we're going to detour here just a little bit.
sure.
Very unscripted. There's a comment you made about when you started feeling better about yourself, you started feeling the spirit more, and that was able to help you in missionary work. When we're confirmed at confirmation after our baptisms, we receive the gift of the Holy Ghost. And then even each week when we take the sacrament, there's this invitation, this hope that we will always have his spirit to be with us. So the invitation is always there, and I believe it's always available to us, those who are ready to receive it and prepared to receive it. It seemed like in some ways you getting control over your life, or at least your eating or your relationship with food or your body, somewhere in there was a window that opened up. Um, could you say more about that? Because at that point, you sort of started feeling the spirit again. I suspect you did feel it. It's not as if that was the very first time, but it may have been more free flowing to you because maybe it was shut off for a time, or you consciously wouldn't receive it. I don't know. But what do you
Yeah.
think about that?
Sid, I feel like our bodies are such a gift. They are such a gift. And I think it's really easy to forget that. And it's easy to feel like it's something we're fighting against, like it's something we're shrinking, like it's something that we are working on, but it's not a part of us. And really, our heavenly parents gave us these bodies to be like them. And as soon that first day that I exercised, it was like somebody injected this breath of like actual life into me. As a missionary, you're so worried about your investigators. And depending on your companionship, either it's draining. I mean, it's not an either or, but you're working on yourself, but your energy is all on your investigators. So it's easy to forget about yourself in that way and not realize I also have needs. My prayers need to be as earnest as my investigator who's wanting to know if they join an entirely new church and change their life. And so feeling the power of that gift and that I had not been taking care of it, which is typical, I think, for many missionaries. It felt like I was receiving the gift of a body and receiving the gift of a soul and taking it seriously. And that I know God does not expect us to be a certain size or weight, or we would be. If that was important to him, we would all be whatever size that is. And it's not. I really, when I got surprise pregnant with our fifth, I had been the healthiest I had ever been physically and mentally. I remember turning up B Street in the avenues, just feeling like, oh, great, I'm going to gain 79 pounds again. And when I say 79, Sid, I mean 79. I gained 79 pounds with Debbie. And I very quickly felt like God does not care about a number on a scale as much as he cares about a soul coming into the world. And that's obvious, but it's hard to feel that way when it's a struggle and it's something that, is in your mind.
That is incredible perspective. I love that. I'm now rethinking it. I love the way you've positioned that. You know, I've known you for a number of years. I, of course, would never have known this personal struggle that you've had inside. We all have our hidden secret struggles we have inside. But
Yeah.
something you just taught me was the moment you open up that struggle to your creator, the one who gave you this gift of the body, then you might be able to see it through his eyes, which changes everything. And in that way, you don't so much worry about what others think. And of course, you've been very open and vulnerable with us today. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
But when you can open up to the creator of heaven and earth and allow yourself to be received by him and the way he sees you, that's a miracle and it changes you from within. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And just
Well,
you saying that, I have 5 daughters and they have 5 different bodies. And, my 7-year-old has already made comments how her body is bigger than Nellie's, who's 10. Nellie's, she has bird bones and Devi has muscles. And as a parent, I'm getting this glimpse of how our heavenly parents feel when we complain, oh, this part of my body's a little too big, or I'd really like this to be this. And it's like, no, look at everything you can do and how healthy you are. And I wouldn't for a second want them to all be the same.
Mhm.
And it's got to be hard for our heavenly parents when we nitpick this gift they've given us. I don't.
Wow. I hate to blame generations, but my generation is also common to look at the physical appearance as being the only judge of a person. And, too often we'd always say, oh, you're so beautiful, you're so handsome.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness, your hair, all these things that they don't always control became their defining characteristic. And
Yeah.
so when I was a grandfather and I remember saying that to my granddaughter, my my wonderful daughter-in-law corrected me very kindly
Yeah.
and said, "Papa, what else does she do?
Yeah.
Is it just about the looks? Is it just about that pretty dress? Because if it's only about that, then they stop forgetting, like you said, what's important inside." And so I stopped doing that. I literally have really consciously made an effort to acknowledge her curiosity, her memory, the things that she does that are really
Yeah.
stand out and that are impressive. And so I have to then look at the inner person and be sure to highlight that as opposed to just looks. Because like you said, your 5 beautiful, amazing daughters, I just said it, beautiful. Your 5
Yeah.
daughters cannot be defined by how they look. They have to be defined by Heavenly Father would view that, and that comes back to their unique characteristics. The
Yeah.
fun, playful, adventurous Ashley, not the formulated, controlled, ruled upon, sort of Ashley. So
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that up. That's
Can I
beautiful.
share two short things?
Please do. Please do.
There's three, but I'll share two things that really helped me come out of the eating disorder that continue to bless me. And one, like you're saying, generationally, it is a thing. I mean, I have the best parents in the world, but I knew that that was important, weight and appearance. And there's a lady in our ward who has been excruciatingly aware of my weight gain and weight loss with every child, with every surgery, anything. And she's not afraid to tell me about it. And she's in her 70s. And I remember being at the grocery store talking to her, and she was telling me what she ate every day, what she would eat. And she said, and I don't really have to count the calories anymore because I have them all memorized. So I know exactly what I can eat. And Sid, I got the biggest pit in my stomach because I had been counting every calorie for so long. And it took all of my brain power. Even with a great app, it took all my brain power, and it made me sick thinking, I'm going to be doing this in 40 years for the next 40 years. And I had this very simple aha moment of, if I don't want to do it then, why on earth would I do it now? And that has transferred to a lot of things in my life of, if I don't want this to be something I'm doing as a grandma, if these aren't words that I would say in 10 years, why would I say them now? And that has changed me. That has completely changed me. I mean, she gave me a humdinger at Christmas time. The whole next hour of church, I was trying not to cry.
Oh, no.
She just can't let me go. But then the other one that plays to what you're saying that your daughter-in-law had brought up, I was biking with a friend. I was close to being out of my eating disorder, if you can even put it that way. And she said, Ash, this is so crazy. I never paid attention to what you looked like. And I was like, really? She goes, no, I always was thinking about how I felt when I was with you. And I said, what? And I realized, if I'm with a group of friends and I have to leave, the last thing I would want them to say is, have you seen Ashley's arms? They look so good. Have you noticed her whittling waist? I would hope they would say, man, Ashley was really funny tonight. Or Ashley had some really great questions tonight. Or Ashley made me feel like I was the only one in the room. I'm not saying those are things about me, but I am saying those are the things that matter. How we look is the least interesting thing about us, but it's the easiest thing to comment on.
Yeah. No, that's true.
And so I try to be very careful when I comment on people's bodies and appearance. I'm not saying that it doesn't feel good when you've worked hard to lose weight to have that acknowledged. I think that's a great thing to acknowledge. But there's a lot of other things that should also be acknowledged. Sorry, that was a tangent.
No,
Go
that
on.
was the perfect tangent. And really, I mean, if you think about it, the more we think about the greatness in others and not just their appearance, the easier it is to see that in ourselves as well. Because too
Mm,
often, those who project that onto others are having their own struggles. And so to be able to change that mental culture to something that actually is more viable in the eyes of God, I believe, the better we'll feel about ourselves. And to your point earlier, if you can feel better about yourself, often you then can open up those windows of heaven and connect more with the Spirit, connect more with. So I think that's a transformational wisdom that you've laid out for us, Ashley, and I really appreciate you adding those. Any
yeah.
additional stories are great. I can tell you one other thing that Ashley is very good at is lip syncing. If you want to get in a lip syncing battle with Ashley, you're going to lose. But anyway,
You
all right.
might. You might. I can't move my head the way I used to, so you might have a chance.
Oh my goodness, she is the absolute Of course, her husband's a mean close second, I'll tell you that
Oh,
much.
no,
He's
no.
fantastic.
Bobby, I will say this 100 times. Bobby is way better, has way more moves, and can jump higher. So really, he wins. I'm happy to be second. I'm happy to be fifth to Bobby any day. He's great.
I love that about you. You are number 1 in so many eyes, obviously your mother and father's, but so many of us as well. But you always put your husband number 1. I always appreciate it
Mm,
about you whenever you start a letter to the family or to a blog of any sort, you're always highlighting the greatness of your husband and how you two work together seamlessly to work through life's challenges. And I really appreciate and admire that about you. Thank you.
yeah, he's the best.
On cue. Thank you. All right. So, just a couple more questions here. Thank you for your time. I know you are a very busy woman, which will be highlighted in other parts of our podcast. So, which role in your life of being a mother, a spouse, and then, of course, an outdoors enthusiast, an adventurer, which role of your life has taught you the most about the Savior's grace and why? Now, you covered that a lot today, but any other thoughts on that?
Yeah. I remember I always liked that we were commanded to be like children. And then I became a mother and I became very confused that we would be commanded to be like children, if I'm being honest. And I'm not going to lie on your podcast. Toddlers do not always seem like who we should try to be like. Um, they're feisty, and teenagers can be feisty. We all have feisty levels and stages. But I remember one time with Brooke, we had gotten into it about something. I don't even remember what. And I was like, ugh, hot and uncomfortable for probably 45 minutes. And she was for maybe 45 seconds. She had forgotten it and she had moved on. And I thought, that's why, because they forgive and they move on and they keep living their life and they look for the next fun thing or the next pretty thing to play with. So as a mother, Sid, I have needed my children's grace so often. I have needed it as a spouse. And as a missionary, like I shared, I needed it to see what my companions needed, not how I needed to train, but what they needed. I remember as a missionary, I was really struggling. It was the same companion and conference was coming up. And, I said that, let me know what I need to know prayer and speak to me, please. And it was the very end of the last session. And I hadn't had anything, and which, of course, as a missionary under a microscope, to me, I thought I must not be worthy enough to get a great answer. And it'll make me cry, but then Elder Hafen spoke about the atonement. And he said, if you're noticing more of your shortcomings and mistakes, it just might mean you're coming closer to God, not farther away. And that was not only a life-changing moment for me, but it taught me about that grace as a missionary, and something that I would teach if I were a missionary now, much more than I would focus on other things. That his grace is always there. Again, as a mom, I have needed it more than I've needed in any other role. My jazz job, it's easy to be nice to everybody. It's easy to even forget a punk teenager that's trying to sneak into a private club. Like doesn't ruffle me. But when my kids ruffle me and I feel those twinges of losing the spirit, I need grace then.
Ashleigh, we've learned much from this conversation. Thank you for sharing your time. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And thank you also for just being the real person that you are, that we love. That person is the one we can brag about to all of our friends. So, one last question before we
Yeah.
close. What advice would you give to those of our listeners who are struggling with those uphill battles, those steep climbs in life? What's your last parting wisdom you could share with us?
I really feel like gratitude is a superpower that can get you through pretty much anything. We had like a 6-month period where kind of our whole world fell apart, and it included a daughter with a brain tumor and a remodel and a new surprise baby. And I remember thinking if all we had right now was the brain tumor, it would feel huge and overwhelming. But we had so many other hard things going on that we could only give it what we could give it. And as funny as it sounds, I was grateful for that. It sounds backwards that I was grateful to have so many things, but it made it so we had to trust Jesus. We had to rely on each other, and we had to rely on our community. And so I think gratitude and building up those around you, because there will be times you need them to build you, and there will be times you get to build them, um, will keep things in perspective of that we are in the eternities. We're not waiting for them to start. We're already in them. And gratitude for Christ's grace now and the people our heavenly parents have given us now will change us and will lift us to where we to get out of those challenges or to endure those challenges. That's what I'd say.
That's great advice.
Gratitude.
Trust Jesus, let others help you, and build along the way. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Ashleigh, we're so grateful you took time to be on the show. Go back to being the amazing person you are, and have a
Will
great
do.
rest of your day. Thank you.
Love you, Sid. Good to see you.
We hope you enjoyed today's program. It is our sincere hope that you gain insights from these lived experiences of disciples of Jesus Christ as you navigate your next chapters in life. We look forward to having you join us each week for the unfolding chapters of our guest. Remember to follow us on Instagram at rmnextchapters. Also, you can visit us on our website at rmnextchapters.com, where you can listen to each podcast or link to your favorite podcasting platform. As always, if you have any thoughts or feedback, we'd love to hear it. Please send it to rmnextchapters@gmail.com. See you soon.